I never imagined that the place I called home for more than 40 years would disappear while I was lying in a hospital bed. Not burned down, not taken by a storm, not lost to some accident of fate, but quietly sold, signed away while I was too weak to stand, too tired to argue, and too trusting to imagine that the people I raised would make such a decision without me. It happened on a Tuesday morning. I remember because the nurse had just adjusted my pillow and told me I'd be staying a few more days. The room smelled faintly of disinfectant and warm linens. My body felt heavy, as though time itself had settled into my bones. I reached for my phone, expecting a message of encouragement, maybe a, "How are you feeling, Mom?" or a reminder that someone was thinking of me. Instead, I saw a short message from my oldest son. It read, "Don't worry, we handled the house situation. Focus on getting better." I read it slowly, then again and again. I didn't understand what he meant by handled. The house wasn't a problem. It wasn't a burden or a complication. It was my home, the place where I raised my children, paid every bill, repaired every leak, and planted roses along the fence because I believed I'd grow old there. I typed back carefully, my fingers trembling, asking what he meant. The reply came quickly, almost too quickly. "We sold it. It was the best decision for everyone." My heart sank in a way I didn't know was possible. The room felt suddenly smaller, as if the walls had leaned in closer. The steady beeping of the machines grew louder in my ears. I asked who had agreed to this. He said they all had. My children, my family. I asked why no one had asked me. His response was calm, measured, rehearsed. "You were sick. We didn't want to stress you." In that moment, I realized something had shifted, not just the ownership of a house, but my place in my own family. I had gone from being a mother to being a liability, a complication, someone to manage instead of someone to consult. Over the next few days, I said very little. I listened. I replayed conversations from the past, how often I had stepped in to help, how often I had covered expenses, how often I had put my own needs aside so theirs could come first. I remembered the down payments I helped with, the emergencies I quietly fixed, the times I said, "It's okay, I don't need much." Slowly, painfully, I began to understand that my silence had been mistaken for consent. I remembered the house in pieces, the kitchen table where homework was done, the hallway wall marked with pencil lines showing how tall they'd grown, the living room where birthdays, arguments, apologies, and forgiveness all unfolded. Every corner held a memory, and now strangers would walk through those rooms without knowing what they meant, and I hadn't even been given a chance to say goodbye. When I was finally discharged, I didn't go home. I couldn't. The house was already empty, sold to people I'd never meet, the furniture gone, the photos boxed up somewhere I wasn't told about. I stayed with my sister instead, recovering in a room that wasn't mine, surrounded by kindness that felt unfamiliar because it didn't come with expectations. At first, the calls from my children were gentle. They asked how I was feeling. They reminded me to take my medication. They spoke as if everything was normal, as if nothing irreversible had happened. But beneath their voices, I sensed unease, a distance, as though they were waiting for something. Then the conversations began to change. They mentioned expenses, unexpected costs, plans that hadn't gone as smoothly as they hoped. One evening, my daughter hesitated before speaking, then finally said it out loud. "We need help." She explained that the money from the house sale hadn't lasted, that debts had appeared, that things were harder than expected. She spoke carefully, choosing words that sounded reasonable, even responsible. Then she said, "It would only be fair if you contributed. It was your house anyway."
something inside me cracked, not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. I realized then that the house hadn't been sold to protect me. It had been sold to fund lives that were never meant to include me in the decision-making process. I told her I needed time to think.
That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling and asked myself questions I had avoided for years. When had love turned into obligation? When had helping become expected? When had my role shifted from mother to safety net? I understood that if I gave in now, there would be no end. That I would spend whatever years I had left fixing problems I didn't create, apologizing for boundaries I was never allowed to have. The next day, I asked them all to come over. I didn't rehearse what I would say. I didn't plan a confrontation. I simply spoke from the quiet place that pain eventually leads you to. I told them how it felt to lose my home without a goodbye, how it felt to be excluded from a decision that erased decades of my life. I told them that love does not give anyone permission to take, to assume, or to decide for someone else. They listened. Some looked uncomfortable, some defensive. No one apologized. And in that silence, I found clarity. I told them I would not give them money, that I was done being the solution to problems I wasn't allowed to question. I said I loved them, but that love would no longer cost me my dignity. When they left, the room felt peaceful. Empty, but peaceful. For the first time in months, I felt steady. Not useful, not needed, just whole. In the weeks that followed, I started over, slowly, quietly. I found a small place of my own. Nothing grand, just enough. I placed a chair near the window. I planted one rose in a pot outside, and every morning I reminded myself that strength doesn't always look like confrontation. Sometimes it looks like choosing yourself without asking for permission. I still love my children. That will never change. But I love myself too. And I've learned that when you protect your boundaries, you teach others how to treat you, even if they never like the lesson. I lost a house, but I found my voice. And that, I've learned, is something no one can ever sell without my consent.